The Light of Darkness, A Warrior's Tale for Our Time, was produced earlier this year. It's about one man's life, Robert Wiegand, who's been fighting the warrior's life since a young age. He's a Navy SEAL who seems to have been groomed for the fight. Bruce McDonald is the co-author on the book, and he's joining us now. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Dean. How are you?
I'm well. When I first saw the title, The Light of Darkness, and then The Warrior's Tale, I didn't kind of marry it up with, with the paranormal, but I guess that's basically what the book is about.
Yes. Yeah, very, very much so, both individually in Robert Wiegand's life, and then from there in the world proper, like, how the paranormal is interacting with our geopolitics and things like this. Absolutely fascinating tale to tell.
Yeah, you can say that again. I mean, I couldn't stop reading once I started reading the book, but Robert Wiegand originally, I think, had trouble getting the information out to the public. So was there
Yeah.
pushback on him getting it out?
Well, he decided about a year ago that he wanted to get his message out, maybe a little bit more than a year ago, and he started with an interview on Project Camelot, which is where I saw him. Now, here's the real story. At the time, I was working on a manuscript with another fellow, and this fellow was based in Oxford, England, very erudite fellow, master's degree in economics, medical doctor, and a degree in computer science, all degrees from Oxford University. And we were doing a story on England and what we'll call institutional Satanism in the modern world. And he had done a tremendous amount of research in his life and had contacted me after reading Stardust Ranch. And he had been to Stardust Ranch himself. He knew John Edmonds. And I'm assuming you've read Stardust Ranch, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So this fellow I was doing the book with was the best friend of Cynthia Crawford for the last 10 years of her life, the alien-human hybrid that we introduce in the Stardust Ranch. We got about a third into the book with him on institutional Satanism, and he got cold feet and abandoned the project, and I haven't spoken to him since. He's never returned an email or a Skype call. And within 24 hours of that, Robert Wiegand came into my life and finished the book.
Wow.
So it was meant to be, it was meant to be. And the Light of Darkness is very much about what we'll call institutional Satanism in the world. Now, let me preface this by saying I was raised a Roman Catholic, but when we say Satanism, it's really a word that is, it's about anti-life, and it's about contempt for the human species. And so it's a bit of a spiritual and an extraterrestrial narrative at the same time. The key thing is contempt for the human species. And so I reworked the beginning of the book to tell Bob's story, and then we segued into the rest of the story. Now, you've read the book, so The Worshipful Fuelers is really a one-to-one carryover from the first fellow I was working with, the highly erudite Oxford graduate with 3 degrees, 2 of them graduate degrees. That didn't come from Robert Wiegand, but he read all the material first, and Bob said, yeah, let's pick up from here. This is brilliant what you've done with this other guy. And he and the other guy are friends now.
Right. Okay.
So it was kind of like a 3-person attempt to write this book. The first fellow, and I don't mention his name on purpose because, he's had problems in the past. He's been targeted. He's been looked at hard by MI6. This is, by the way, Dean, when you hear stuff like this, sometimes it's people putting themselves up on a pedestal. Oh, I live a dangerous life. I'm like James Bond 007. And it's nonsense. And some people, it's 100% real. And with this gentleman in Oxford, it was 100% real.
Right.
All kinds of interference writing the book with them, electronic, circumstantial. It seemed like we were being attacked from a number of different dimensions at the same time. When Robert Wiegand stepped in to finish the book with me, he took control of the entire process and created a protection bubble around the whole thing. And we can talk a little bit about Bob if you want. Now, Bob will not do any interviews for this book. His responsibility was writing the book. He doesn't even want to talk about it anymore. And we agreed generally that we weren't going to do a whole lot of interviews for this book. But you know, this came up serendipitously. You contacted me, so I feel obliged to do the interview. But we haven't done any marketing on the book, but it's selling quite well just by word of mouth.
I mean, I can vouch for that. I was trying to find any interviews Bob had done with anyone, and I found one interview, no, maybe two interviews. One with Mysterious Universe, and another one with a guy in the UK, and that was it. But what I heard, it just absolutely floored me. So Bob's basically had a pretty tough life from the get-go, hasn't he?
Bob is an extraordinary human being. I've never met anybody like him, and I've met all kinds of extraordinary people. You know, in the Gurdjieff sense. I mean, I've been good friends with Sufi sheikhs, Taoist masters, esoteric Buddhist masters, um, Sant Mat masters in northern India. We've been, my son and I have been to the ashrams. I'm no stranger to supernatural
Mm-hmm.
and the supernatural and these sorts. Bob is in a league of his own. I don't know what is going on with that guy, but I mean, it's almost a little bit spooky to interact with him because he knows everything about you,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, and you know he's very good about it and stuff like that. But a very very interesting character, and I think he's been charged with the mission. And I think that stage one of the mission was the book, and the other part of the mission will be done off the public stage. But absolutely, briefly, he was raised in California in Bell's Garden. He's the grandson of a German rocket scientist who left the um, Germany in 1933 because he didn't like Hitler, came to America, and his three sons, you know, Bob's father and his two uncles, went back with the American forces to fight World War II. You know,
Wow.
7 years after emigrating.
Yep.
So there's a whole other
Yeah.
story there about
Yeah.
World War II and the Germans.
Yep.
Bob won't give that story to anybody. It's a taboo topic, right? So right off the bat, you're dealing with an interesting guy. Um, you know, he goes on in his life. He's raised a Mormon by his mom. His mom comes from Mormons. She's, you know, right from the old stock in the origins of the Mormon religion. Bob's mother, her side of the family goes right back to the, you know, John Smith and the origin of the Mormon religion. So Bob was a Mormon growing up. He took it very seriously. Like even when his mother and his brothers didn't go to the Mormon services, he went weekly, and he ended up doing a mission for the Mormon Church. That's in the book as well. He talks about, you know, early on doing exorcisms. He had his first near-death experience before he was 10 years old by having his throat slit
Mm-hmm.
on the streets of California.
He was only
Not,
5. He was only 5 years
uh,
old.
I believe he was 7.
Oh, 7.
Um,
Okay. Wow.
yeah, but there was, you know, there wasn't a lot of parental guidance in his life, so he was out on the streets alone at midnight, and some stranger just came up and put a knife to his throat, you know, and the other neighbors came out and scared the guy away, but Bob had his throat slit, and he left his body, and he was watching the whole thing. So Bob has had numerous near-death experiences in his life, which I think opened him up to become the person that he is. Um, and then at the age of 28, he applied for Navy Special Warfare, the Navy SEAL School, which is absolutely ridiculous. Nobody does it at 28.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, but he got through it. Not only did he get through it, so I'll briefly go through this. If you have 1,000 applicants to the program, 100 might be selected to enter the program.
Mm-hmm.
Of the 100 who enter, 10 may finish. Of the 10 who finish, 1 out of the 10 may finish in one run. Because in the Navy Special Warfare training, you're allowed to take time off because the injuries are extremely severe. People die in this training to this day. They don't publicize it as much, but people die doing it.
Mm-hmm.
They drown in the ocean in the middle of the night.
Yep.
And there's a lot of serious injuries, and you have to take 2 or 3 months off, but you can rejoin at the segment of the training you didn't finish. If you got 2 months injured, you leave back and you begin at the same mark you left. My point in telling you all of this is maybe 1 in 1,000 people begin the Navy Special Warfare training and finish in one go.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob did this at 28.
Wow.
right? And so extraordinary physical specimen, mental specimen, and spiritual specimen. He's just an extraordinary human being. So he was in Navy Special Warfare as an officer for 7 years. Most of his work was with mini subs. None of that is in the book. But Bob has told his story, maintaining every oath he has taken. He hasn't broken any oaths. Um, he was also a CIA contractor for a while, very dark period of his life. He himself became very interested in UFOs and ended up reading all of the Billy Meyer material and then going over to Switzerland and spending a number of months with Billy and the people over there. And the last sort of biographical detail I'll give about Bob is he also blooded into Palo Mayombe, which is the darkest of the blood magic religions on the planet right now. It makes Santeria look like kindergarten.
Hmm.
Why he did that, that's, he just did. I mean, Bob is he'll turn over any stone. And then he blooded out of that religion. And to blood out, there's a blood in ritual and there's a blood out ritual. So Bob is what I would describe. I would say he's the best traveler I've ever met. And what is a traveler? A traveler is someone who can just go to other dimensions with their consciousness. There are psychics and clairvoyants, and then there's people like Bob, and there is no word to describe him. I mean, I've been on Skype calls where he's done exorcisms, and
Wow.
and the person is giving the details, and they talk for about 15 seconds, and Bob says, "You don't have to talk anymore. I know everything. There's 6 of them. This is the coven of witches that put them on you. Is your you know has your is your mother having any problems with her heart, because I see something working on your mother?" And the person breaks down crying in the Skype call. "Yeah, her heart rate is doubled. She's 84 years old." Boom. It's cleaned out in 15 seconds. And I said to Bob, I said, "Can you teach me how to do that? I'd like to do exorcisms." He said, "Bruce, the price is too high. You have a really great life. Don't worry about it. If you ever have any problems, call
Right.
me." And I said, "Okay, I'll be your writer. You be my exorcist." But he's also had extensive interaction with extraterrestrial races. He's beyond a contactee. I would say at this point, he can talk to almost any race he wants to talk to. He can just summon them into his consciousness space
Yep.
and meet with them. So he's a very extraordinary fellow. And because he's oscillated between light and darkness his whole life, like Palo Mayombe, like the Navy SEALs, like CIA contracting, he was in a unique position to tell a story about how the light and the darkness work together in a very kind of Buddhist way. And how the Abrahamic schism we're in, where there's a big conflict between the light and the dark, is creating a lot of the problems on the planet. I'll stop there. I mean, I've spoken too much already.
Well,
We'll go back to your questions.
well, I thought, I mean, I kind of like I kind of got into the second section of the book probably most of all, and I just thought I might highlight a couple of, maybe 3 or 4 areas of that part of the book, and maybe, I mean, if you can explain it, great. If you can't, well, we'll just
Sure.
move on. But I was
Yeah.
fascinated to hear him actually in an interview when he said there is no good and bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that too. After 35 years of meditating, there's only experience. Okay. I mean, you may find yourself in a certain time in your life having to fight evil. I may find myself having to fight evil. Okay. It could happen in a way where there's nothing I can do about it. We could go to war. I think you and I are a bit old to be conscripted, but I mean, living in Costa Rica, the way the world is going now, we could get an invasion by Nicaragua next year, right?
Hmm.
There's a very, very bad blood between Nicaragua and Costa Rica going back to um, Iran Contra and all that stuff in the 80s, because Costa Rica was the staging ground for U.S. military operations in Nicaragua, which
Right.
is our northern neighbor. So look, there is good and evil, and there isn't good and evil. And really, I think the point of the book is that you want to cycle out of that consciousness, right? In most instances, evil will peter out itself. Okay. And when you confront it, what happens is you end up in what we'll call, using part of the Buddhist lexicon, you end up allowing the negative to do a karma transfer to you. Because when you judge something, what you're saying we'll go back to the Jungian model, what you're saying at an unconscious level is, "I want this experience." That's what you're saying when you judge something, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So now it's but I don't want the listener and the person who watches this interview to think that it's all judgment. You have to understand what judgment is. There's judgment that you use. If somebody calls you up on the telephone trying to say something, you use your judgment. No, I don't want this product. Yes, I do want this product. Yes, I will try your internet service. You use your judgment, okay? So this is judgment in the sort of agnostic or neutral thing. And then when you get into the Abrahamic religions and you get into the spiritual texts, judgment takes on a whole new context. And this is the judgment we're warning against, okay? And one of the reasons the evil in the world has been able to persist so long is that a lot of people get dragged into it through judgment. Whereas if evil is left to its own, the consequence of its own action will wipe it out soon enough. And so this is I think what Bob and I are trying to say when there is no good and evil,
Right.
right?
Right. And he also talks about, he says he's worked with the devil, and he says
Yeah.
that we live in a satanic Luciferian system.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a bit
We absolutely.
frightening.
Well, we do live in a satanic Luciferian system. Everything is inverted from its stated intent, right? The education system makes you dumber. The medical system makes you sicker. The financial system makes you poorer. The legal system robs you of justice. All of the stated intent of the practicing institutions now are operating in their inverse. How did that happen,
Hmm.
right? How did that happen? So the satanic Luciferian system is everywhere now. And remember, satanic just means anti-life.
Yep.
That's all it means. It's anti-life. Now, the devil as an entity is the fourth dimensional entity, and he's aptly referred to as the unclean one, right? I've never been around this entity. I have known other people, like deep meditators in India and stuff, who've met this entity. Bob's not the first person I've met who claims they've met this entity that we call the devil, and they all describe the entity the exact same way. It's like, imagine the worst smell you could possibly imagine.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we mean by the unclean one. Imagine being in a room, a small windowless room, sitting on the floor, surrounded by rotting flesh and maggots and the smell of death and just the smell of decay, and to the point that you're going to vomit. That is pretty much what this entity feels like around you. And when Bob did summon the devil in a Palo Mayombe ritual, which with his tata, which is the person who initiated him into Palo Mayombe, and he was prodigious. He was prodigious as at that as well. It was like through the charts. I mean, he became one of the best practitioners of Palo Mayombe in California, which is one of the centers of Palo Mayombe in the world now. So it's because he was so spiritually primed to begin with all the near-death experiences and all of these sorts of things. Now, Palo Mayombe does a lot of good work too. They heal people. Know, they do a lot of these sorts of things. And you may say to yourself, why would a blood religion that creates a mesa or a temple with cauldrons and human bones in it be healing people? And I would say to you, Dean, that's an excellent question. And I would come back with, why did John of God heal people? Right? And that
Mm-hmm.
was an interesting story, wasn't it, as well? So what we're learning in the 21st century is that spiritually, things are not always what they seem. This John of God guy got away with being this Catholic holy man in South America for 20 years, and he legitimately healed people. I have a friend in Toronto who went with his wife to see him, and they both got healings, and they were both healed. And it turns out that the guy is running a baby farm, and he's just this horrible human being. And this is another sort of little story or chapter in this, like, how do you discern between good and evil and
Yeah.
right and wrong in the modern world, right? And so Bob summoned the devil, and his tata vomited immediately and had to leave the mesa. And Bob has a constitution for enduring the negative that is almost mind-boggling.
Wow.
Okay, mind-boggling. Do you remember the Robert Duvall character in
Mm-hmm.
Apocalypse Now? As he's just
Yep.
walking the field. That's Bob. That's Bob. The big battle, dead bodies all around you, and we're going surfing in 20 minutes. That's Bob, right? Extremely positive guy,
Yep.
always
Yep.
smiling, incredible sense of humor. never says anything negative, but he has this capacity to both in the physical world and in the astral to go through regions of negativity that would bring a saint to his knees, right? And I felt a little bit of it. We can talk about that later in the interview, what it's like to write these books, you know, The Light of Darkness and Stardust Ranch, because I had encounters with the gray energy. John Edmonds' book, Stardust Ranch, The Incredible True Story, was a very phenomenological book for me to write. I had furniture move in my house, Dean. I
Wow.
had,
Well,
I, you know,
well, actually,
so that,
I've actually interviewed John, and as we meet today for the first time, I actually put together the first part of that interview I did with John, and we started off with the furniture that was moved from his house into his pool, and which was
yeah.
just mind-boggling. But